I spent 3 years turning my balcony into a watermelon maze. But I didn't just stop at watermelons. Unknowingly, I set the stage for my balcony to blossom into a whole web of melons in the melon family. And today, I'm excited to guide you on exactly how I did this so you can grow your very own baby melon haven on your balcony too. Well, it all started with one watermelon, this one right here. I had no idea the journey I was in for, but I cut the big red ball open to reveal the inner juicy seeds, and I removed them one by one into a bowl of water and let them sit there for 15 minutes. Then I strained the water, washed any excess fruit off, and got the clean seeds on a damp piece of paper towel to germinate. Not Germany, but germinate. At the same time, I also got a little pot of soil and put some of the seeds in some soil. I wanted to make sure we had options just in case one failed. Now, this was the very first time I ever tried to grow a watermelon 3 years ago. So there were a few things that I learned that I did wrong here, especially after seeing that the seeds were just molding over on the paper towel and not sprouting in the soil either. I didn't understand why the seeds weren't sprouting. I thought it would happen very fast, but I learned that you actually cannot grow watermelon seeds unless the seeds are dark in color. The dark seeds are almost always viable for growing, but the translucent seeds are not. I'll explain why in a second, but after realizing that the seeds didn't sprout because they were translucent and not viable for growing, you already know that I got my hands on a second watermelon to do it right this time. This time, determined as ever, I cut it open to reveal the inner juicy seeds that I was about to grow successfully. But I was disappointed to open it and see that there were no black seeds. I was confused, but then learned more about why some watermelons don't have the darker seeds and why it's so surprisingly difficult to find a watermelon in Canada with seeds. The reason that most watermelons are seedless in the grocery store is because they are cultivated through a specialized breeding process, and essentially they're picked early so the seeds end up being underdeveloped. So basically, seedless watermelons are not entirely seedless since they have small, edible, undeveloped, translucent seeds, and the reason why most watermelons you find in the stores are seedless is because it provides the element of convenience for consumers, oddly enough. So to find watermelons that actually have the dark seeds, you have to specifically ensure the watermelon does not mention anything about being seedless. And tell me they aren't extremely difficult to find, please change my mind. But I had still bought this watermelon, so I spent some time scraping out the seeds anyway to see if we would get lucky and find a dark one. I noticed that some of the seeds looked a little bit dark, not as translucent as others, and I had hope. So I figured let's try planting these anyways because maybe they'll grow. You know the drill, I got the seeds on a damp piece of paper towel. Okay, sorry, I ran out of paper towel this time and I used a napkin with color on it, okay? Don't come at me for that, but I got them on a piece of pink napkin. And the hardest part came waiting for the little sprouty sprouts to sprout. And if you know anything about this channel, then you already know that I got a little pot of soil because we needed options here. We persevere and we fight and we do not give up until we grow fruit successfully, okay? Even if it's not the first time around, okay? It's all a learning process of trial and error. You should know that by now. But I got the fruit right in some soil, and as I waited, I was well aware that I was gonna have to get my hands on some dark seeds if I wanted a 100% germination success rate here on my balcony garden, and since it was so hard to find watermelons with darn seeds in the grocery store, I ended up going against what I normally like doing, and I got some seeds in the package. Usually I like to try only growing my plants from the seed because it's way cooler that way, but you live and you learn, and I just wanted darn watermelons, so I settled with these seeds. And of course, after I planted them, it started to grow very fast. After only 3 days, I had little baby seedlings. With these seeds though, I decided to only give us one option, planting them in soil. That was quite a risk. Usually I give us more options like germinating some too, but I figured if we had these seeds from the package, they would be 100% viable to grow and we would have a 100% success rate on the balcony. Well, I watched them grow slowly but surely, and it's safe to say that I was so excited to have our watermelons quite soon. But this was technically still the very first time I would attempt to grow watermelons, minus the first fail and the second one that we're still waiting on to see if they'll sprout, and for some reason, unbeknownst to me, even though the plant was growing really nicely and I was darn well excited, it did not sprout baby watermelons for the life of me, no matter how big the plant got, and I was confuzzled. But I decided that the reason this happened was maybe because there weren't enough pollinators like bees and butterflies buzzing around my garden to help bring the male parts parts of the plant to the female, because that's really the only way that this thing will have a shot at sprouting. In order for watermelons to actually grow, they mainly rely on pollinators like bees for a successful fruit set. Without actual proper pollination, you may end up with either fewer fruits or misshapen fruits, which was the case here for us, but hey, we welcome misshapen fruits and we did not give up here. And listen, if watermelons are believed to be one of the oldest known cultivated crops in the world, I was confident it was possible for us to just grow one, or maybe many. But obviously my watermelon obsession was at an all-time high and I was learning every step of the journey. But as you well know, I was still not happy at all with these results because the summer was close to coming to a close and I didn't get my babies. But determined as ever to grow these darn things, I literally waited a full year for the summer to come back around since I live in Canada and you can't really grow this stuff in the winter. Well, I got my seeds ready to go, but they weren't packaged this time. They were from a watermelon that I was eating at a family dinner and I saw this little dark thing poking out of the watermelon, what looked to be a dark seed viable for growing. Perfect timing to steal the seed and plant it in some soil on my balcony. Well, immediately I did just that and I knew that this was it. This was the one that would sprout. And as it grew, I thought back to the thing I learned about the watermelon flowers needing to be pollinated, so I made sure to hand pollinate these little flowers with a little brush ever so gently, bringing the pollen from one flower to another, and soon, I don't know if it was me or the bees or the butterflies, I saw a baby watermelon sprouting up. I was so excited, and honestly, I didn't realize the little watermelon could grow on such a tiny plant, but this was a success. And as I waited for my baby watermelons to sprout up, this was the progress. I got so excited that I built myself a garden box for more watermelons, and I also planted more in my garden box to give us more options, of course. Now, under ideal conditions, some varieties of watermelons can grow up to 2 inches per day, which is like 5 centimeters per day, and that means they can grow bigger than my head in a very short amount of time. Some gardeners even practice companion planting by growing watermelons alongside other crops like corn or radishes or garlic to maximize space and discourage pests. It really works, you should try that. And as I watched my watermelons grow in my little pot, I noticed that it was extremely humid outside, like oddly humid out here in Canada, and I even covered the melons with this little netting to make sure the little critters didn't come and eat them. But something came and got through to one of these little watermelons, and unfortunately it was not savable. But it's a good thing that a watermelon is a vine because many can grow. So I was happy that we still had others that were continuing to grow and sprout up. They were so cute, and honestly, at this point, I'm really not sure when to pick them because I don't want this happening to my watermelons like it happened to my zucchini. I don't know if it's the hot weather or the humidity or if I just didn't pick it early enough, but these things literally explode on ya, and we don't want that. But I learned that to determine if a watermelon is actually ripe for harvest, you should look for signs like a dull rind, a creamy yellow spot on the underside where it kind of sat on the ground, and even a hollow sound when you thump it with your fist. I also heard that the sweeter watermelons have a smaller vine hole on the top side where it's picked from the vine plant, so you can look for that. I have not been able to confirm that yet. But I also did something really cool because I had these pumpkin plants growing beside my watermelon, so I wanted to see if I could cross-pollinate them and see if I could grow a watermelon pumpkin hybrid. I did some research and learned that cross-pollinating a pumpkin with a watermelon would likely not result in a hybrid fruit that combines the characteristics of both plants because they come from different families of fruits. So the difference in genetic structures and reproductive mechanisms would likely not yield any fruit, and if it did, you would get a pretty warped fruit. However, we are okay with warped fruit, and there is a small chance that it would be successful, but the fruit just may not develop properly because the flowers of each plant are not compatible with each other. But heck, I was determined to try anyway, so I took some pollen from the pumpkin flowers and rubbed them up in the watermelon flowers, and now I'm waiting to see if we make a baby. And as I wait for my watermelons to be ready for harvest and to see if we're gonna grow a pumpkin watermelon hybrid warped fruit, this was the progress of the watermelons that I had planted in the garden box that I built. And listen, I was so excited to finally have watermelons that honestly I got a little bit of a melon obsession, okay? I'm sorry. I wanted to grow all the watermelons in the world, but I realized that there are also so many other melon varieties that I needed to try growing, and I wanted to see if other melons like Cantaloupe and Muskmelon would grow as quickly and easily as watermelons. Plus, I still had time left in the summer, so I walked over to the local grocery store. Oh heck, who am I kidding? I sprinted over and purchased a cantaloupe, brought it home, and kept in mind the newfound knowledge I had about growing melons, all geared up in a garden toolbox ready to be opened up and utilized to have a 100% success rate at growing other melons in the family. So I darn well raced home and decided it was finally time to try growing a cantaloupe. I cut it open, scooped out the seeds, soaked them in water for 15 minutes to clean them, and then I got them on a piece of damp paper towel to germinate. I was so excited to see that the little seedlings on the paper towel started to sprout in just 3 days, and they were almost ready to be transplanted into some soil. As I began to transplant them and wait for these little sprouty sprouts to sprout up even more, I learned that cantaloupe seeds are actually very different from watermelon seeds because the success rate of germination for the cantaloupe seed supersedes that of the watermelon. For the watermelon, you need the darker seeds, but the cantaloupe has white translucent seeds that are almost always viable for growing. Now, cantaloupes can be bred to be seedless, similar to how watermelons are bred, but the cantaloupes you typically find in the grocery store are not usually seedless because they're usually grown for their flavor and their texture, and the seeds help enhance that rather than the seedlessness of it. Developing seedless cantaloupes is more challenging than watermelons for scientists and botanists, and the two fruits actually both come from different families, which means they actually have a whole different genetic makeup of characteristics, making it more complex for the cantaloupes to be bred as seedless, but easier for the watermelons. Weird, I know. Well, anywho, as they grew, I repotted them as necessary, and before I knew it, my plant was huge! I really recommend planting in a vertical pot because this grew crazy fast and big and beautiful, and it really worked, and I was so excited. And as I grew this cantaloupe, I learned that there's actually a fruit called muskmelon. Cantaloupes and muskmelons are often used interchangeably, leading to some confusion, but they're technically not the same. Cantaloupes are a type of muskmelon, but they have a distinct flavor, a distinct appearance, and the flesh can vary in color from beige to orange, whereas muskmelons range from green, orange, or even white. Somehow I got my hands on these muskmelon seeds, and I grew them in my grow box with the other watermelons too, and this was the progress of the muskmelon. It really worked, and they grew up in just 10 weeks, and I'm still waiting for those to sprout fully, so you'll have to come back for an update. But as I wait for our watermelons, cantaloupes, and muskmelons to grow, I also learned something really cool, that there's something that exists called a watermelon radish. It's named for its appearance, which resembles a little miniature watermelon. The outer skin of a watermelon radish is typically pale, green, or white, while the inside flesh is a vibrant pink or magenta, kind of similar to the colors found in a watermelon. And I really wanted to get my hands on some to see if they tasted anything like watermelons, and if you know anything about me, of course, we also had to grow them. So I did just that. It did not in fact taste like a watermelon, but it was pretty sweet for being a radish. It's safe to say that it tasted pretty rad. And I basically just cut it in half and placed one in water so that it would grow a stem and a root system. You can actually do this with most veggies at home too. It works with beets, broccoli, carrot tops, radishes, and so many others. So you'll better try it. But make sure that it has a lot of sun so it doesn't mold, because you are working with the root there. But once it sprouted in water, it was ready for a new home. I placed it in soil and I waited, I repotted it as necessary, and soon it was a plant with this thing growing out of it. And what I realized was that these are radish seed pods. I broke it open to see if I could save the seeds to grow for next year, but I realized the seeds definitely were not ready yet, so I left the plant a little while longer, and I picked some radishes as I waited. It was so much fun, highly recommend, 10 out of 10, beautiful experience. I didn't even realize they grew underground, but I guess that makes sense because they're botanically classified as a root veggie. Well, anywho, soon the pods did dry up, and at that point, I picked a few off the plant to see if the seeds were savable yet or not. And lo and behold, the seeds were small, the seeds were dark, the seeds were dried out, and definitely ready to save for next year's growing. And you know that I did just that. As soon as the next summer came around, which was this summer, I had my homegrown radish seeds ready to plant. And not just any radish, but a watermelon radish to go with my watermelons and cantaloupes and muskmelons. This is what the progress looked like after planting those homegrown seeds this summer, and it was also starting to grow its own little seed pods. And we had a little bit of an aphid problem. Those things literally literally move in unison. It's creepy as heckin', but that is okay because I combated those things, and I think honestly it was just so hot outside that I'm pretty sure they like dried up on the plant, but luckily the plant still managed to thrive, which is the good news out of all of this. And as I wait to pick my radish, the very last thing I learned in this journey that I really want to share with you is that there are fruits that exist called watermelon guavas. They're basically the watermelon of guavas, no pun intended. They're pink and they taste pretty much like a hybrid of a watermelon and a guava. There are just so many seeds that are pretty hard to chew, but the flavor itself is outstanding. Well, I wanted to cut one open and show you what it looks like and show you the plant that I grew from the seeds inside, just in case you get your hands on a watermelon guava and want to grow them at home too. So go grow your watermelons, cantaloupes, watermelon radishes, watermelon guavas, and literally any fruit that has watermelon involved with it that you can get your hands on, because nature will reward you and your modes of sustainability. Well, it all started with one watermelon, which turned into a family of baby melons, including but not limited to cantaloupe, muskmelon, watermelon radish, watermelon guava, and there was more I wanted to show you, but I figured I had to end this video sooner rather than later because I could rap talk forever about these fruit stories throughout the past few years that I have experienced. Anywho, it's safe to say that my obsession with watermelons and the melon family in general is at a very all-time high, and I'm not stopping growing these beautiful fruits anytime soon. Now you know exactly how to take the viable dark seeds from a watermelon and almost any seed from cantaloupes and muskmelons and grow them into a full-blown houseplant that actually fruits in just 12 weeks. A very short amount of time for growing crops. And you can do this even if you live in an urban environment and are growing on a balcony just like me. Unknowingly, I set the stage for my apartment balcony to blossom into an entire web of melons in the melon family and anything that has a watermelon in its name. And I'm so thankful that I got to show you a little bit of my journey and guide you through the process of growing melons so that you can do it successfully the first time around at home and not the 10th like it takes for me. Creating our very own baby melon haven was such a wild ride that I'm so thankful I got to share with you. Thank you guys so much. Without you, none of this would be possible, so it means the world to me that you spent the time watching my video, and it would equally mean as much to me if you didn't forget to like, comment, follow, subscribe, and remember that on this channel we take the seeds from inside exotic fruits and grow them into full-blown houseplants that fruit. Always remember that
I love you.
And I'll see you next week.